All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and start right back up. I will tell you from that very first session, I know that Ms. Gabriel appreciates the interaction on that and the questions. And that's what she was hoping for, is that more of a conversation as opposed to a lecture. So I would encourage you to do that in terms of that. And one thing, though, that stuck out for me in that first session, I got to tell you, I never liked Justin Bieber. And now that I know he's a terrorist, I like him even less on that deal. So that's the one thing I took out of this, okay?
So we're not going to appeal to you online with Bieberism?
No, ma'am, on that. So Ms. Gabriel, thank you.
So yes, I changed my shoes, but actually I didn't plan that. It's actually a really good segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is fashion forecasting and trend forecasting online, and how there are a multitude of factors that shape trends, shape people's openness to trends, and how we can use technology to sort of predict what's going to be trendy, whether it's terrorism or fashion or, green juice. So machine learning is all around you. I promise that before I ever had any idea that I was going to work for Alexa, computational social science and machine learning was my bread and butter. The way that I kind of came into this was I was a program manager for a project funded by the National Science Foundation, and it was about creating a computational model to predict political violence on social media by looking at grievance. And so we basically taught the machine, we trained the classifier to identify certain words, natural language processing, and figure out how aggrieved people were, and then look at how that was manifesting online, and then looking at the correlation with offline political violence. In so doing, I had never taken a computer science class, nothing, I can remember before the internet, and I think a lot of people my age are, the last people who will never take a computer science class unless they choose to. I think in the future, most people will end up taking some sort of introductory computer science course. But I worked with a computer scientist, Dr. Cody Benton, who actually now is at the iSchool at the University of Maryland. And so he is somebody who studies information online and how that kind of translates into real world activities. So all the things that we're talking about, his name is Dr. Cody Benton. He's done a lot of really good work on this, if you want to look him up. Highly, highly recommend his work. But I worked with him, and I really recognized that there is a tremendous value in working across disciplines, right? So in social science, we can only do so much with the tools that we have and the skills that we have to understand problems. But in the 21st century, we're in the information age. If everything is an information war, and I have no tools that I need to study, predict, detect on social platforms, I'm not going to get very far. So computational social science really is the intersection between social science, the study of human behavior, and computer science, which is, machine learning, technological innovation, and things like that. And so I think that the future of both disciplines, the future of social science is really in computational social science. However, as we're going to talk about, there is only so much that you can learn from the internet. It's not always 100% reliable. We're going to talk about why that is. Anyway, machine learning. I work for Alexa, right? Does anybody know about natural language processing? No. Okay. So natural language processing is something that came out of, I can't remember actually where it started, but basically it's about what can we infer based on what people say about what they mean, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can apply this. There's like a dictionary, right? And if you say something to Alexa, there is a probability model that says, I think they said this, or I think they're asking that. And based on what you have said to Alexa in the past, Alexa's going to get smarter the more you use her, because she's going to be better able to understand what you're saying. There's also another use for natural language processing, which is basically if you have a 15-year-old on the internet from Kansas, right? Even if they don't tell you that they're a 15-year-old on the internet from Kansas, you can use natural language processing and machine learning to infer, based on the way that they speak, the language that they use, their punctuation, things of that nature, how old they are, what demographic they are, their socioeconomic status, a lot of these things are pretty standard. You don't like, maybe we don't think about it in our everyday life, but when you're talking to someone, like you can get a sense of how educated they are, where they're from, by their accent, things like that. And so it is something that's really powerful for social science, generally speaking. But anyway, I want to hear from you. This is going to be a lot more conversational than the last block. What in your daily lives where do you encounter machine learning the most in your lives?
You send a text message, the auto text messaging.
Taking all of my good examples.
I'm sorry, I'm here to help you.
No, you're absolutely right. The predictive text, it's called Bayesian analysis, and that's like actually something that Barnett does, and I think it's like voodoo science, but you know, if he was here, he would disagree with me. And it's basically the predictive text on your iPhone. Like, the more you use it, the more it can anticipate what you're trying to say. It uses context clues. They have, how many people use iPhones, right? Apple has probably the biggest database of language, and they have demographics. They have user demographics that exists probably next to Google, right? And so from everywhere around the world, they can make their machine learning algorithms smarter.
When I get in my car to go to work, my iPhone will tell me 15 minutes light traffic to go to work.
Exactly.
or
Do you
come
know
home.
how?
It picks up my pattern and
Yes.
the GPS is knowing that my
Yes.
routine.
Actually, there's a really, really, really interesting, not interesting, it was kind of sad. A woman figured out that her husband was cheating on her because remember a couple of years ago how you, for the first time, could request your entire Google history and see what Google had on you? That actually, that came out of a new law that was in the EU. Do you know what GDPR is? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so the EU law was you have to give all of your users every single data point that you have on them, absolutely. And so tech companies like Google doesn't just operate in the US or the EU. You know, their privacy policies really have to apply to everyone. Anyway, this woman was able to infer that her husband had been having an affair because every day at lunch he would go to this same place. And so I think she had her GPS and it kept telling him like to this address, you know, it's, you know, go to this address. And she's like, oh, my husband's been having an affair because their GPS in their car is shared and they use it for Google Maps. So things like that, you can tell a lot. But yes, the way that they can tell you how much traffic there is. So Waze and stuff, like in the beginning, it was like, oh, user reported traffic here, user reported traffic here. That's how you can infer. However, what they're really doing is, unless you've turned your location services off, unless you're using the GPS, they can see how fast or slow cars are going in that area. And based on machine learning, you're not in that traffic right now. But if this is the traffic pattern at 9 o'clock and people are going this slow now, we can then infer what the traffic pattern will be at 2 o'clock when you leave from work. And the more people contribute to this, the more people have GPS and iPhones and all of these things, the more accurate that gets. And so that's one way that we use machine learning. Anybody else?
Your car now has the enabled to actually track where it's actually going without you even knowing that it's tracking where you're going.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm just going to caveat here. This is not a lecture about privacy. I do Alexa privacy policy. My title is Alexa Privacy Policy Manager. So if you want to have a discussion about privacy, by all means, we can take it offline. But this isn't about the merits of technology or not. I will tell you, Alexa is not always listening to you. I promise. And I'm the person who makes sure that that's actually happening or not happening. But yes, the car. Your car can track you, and that's how people who have been abducted and there's all of these law enforcement tools now that leverage GPS to prevent crimes or find crimes or solve crimes. And so there are very positive uses for those things as well. What about mail? Email.
Well, same thing with, like you're saying with Netflix, whenever you watch a movie, it makes suggestions based on your previous movies that you watched. It says,
But
So-
login entries too, though, there are
yeah.
behind that of where you're actually logging in. Like, so you may not be at home, but you're logging in from wherever it is that you're hitting that IPN, it actually then, oh, today you are in a new location.
I wonder who the analysts are in the room. No, but for sure, like, and in the tech industry, like LinkedIn actually, how many people are familiar with the concept of social engineering? Okay, yeah, social engineering, right? Like now you don't even have to have a technological way to spy on people or, get, like, you don't have to hack anything. All you have to do is get people to give you information. And so the way that we investigate that in the tech world is we look at irregular patterns of behavior. So maybe this person is saying that they work at a think tank in Texas, but their activity is all on a Russian St. Petersburg time schedule, right? Like, what can we infer about that? Things of that nature is, interesting. But again, not what this is about. Anybody else? Machine
I
learning.
guess sometimes when you're filling out a form online, it pre-populates everything for you, your address, everything.
Yes. So by the way, let me just say, those are all settings that you can turn on and off.
Yes.
You don't have to have anybody know anything about you. However, I will say that things like Alexa, your browser, like those things are as useful as an egg timer. Like you might as well not even use them if you're not going to let it cater to your needs. But then, that's a personal choice. Netflix, they had a worldwide competition about like how to make the what to watch algorithm. And this guy actually works with Barnett now. So I'm super interested in going to pick his brain. But this guy is like, I think he's like a Nobel Prize winner, something like that. He's like a really big deal. But the way that he developed this is super novel, and I can't even begin to understand how it was done, so I'm not going to pretend to like tell you. But if you want to go look it up, the Netflix algorithm, super, super interesting.
My watch is telling me I have walked or run 58.4 miles so far this month, average 3.5 miles a day for the rest of the month to make the target they recommend.
Yeah. I mean, so can I tell you something? I'm 32 years old. I don't mind telling you guys that. So in my 20s, actually, Barnett will tell you, I never got to work before 10 a.m. If anybody expected me to be at work before 10 a.m., they were just having unreasonable expectations. I was not a morning person. I was definitely more productive at night, and there are people who are that way. It's not like I was like being like truant at work. I was working late, right? And over COVID, I had like some sort of, I don't know, maybe something happened in my brain, they should study me. But now I go to bed no later than 10:30. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I read, I drink my coffee, I work out, and I'm like good to go. Start my day at 8:30. I never told anyone this, never made any settings, whatever. Like maybe just have my alarm or whatever. Now, 9:45, my iPhone will buzz, the health app. It looks like your 10:30 bedtime is approaching. Consider winding down. I have given the health app access to all of these things. It's not like it was spying on me without my knowledge. Of course, I integrate my Apple Watch, I integrate my alarms, I integrate all of these things, right? But it's crazy that it's like, you go to bed usually at 10:30, so like maybe you want to start winding down. It's 9:45. Super exciting, guys. Super, super exciting. But yes, all of those things. And they have really positive uses. And I know we're kind of getting away. We could talk about this all day. It's very interesting. But Alexa actually we only use data for machine learning purposes that is like less than 6 years old, right? Which is fine because Alexa was born in 2014, right? So we are spending so much money storing this data and we're not using it. So most people from a business perspective, you would say like, why do you want to keep this data? There's actually a lot of evidence that patterns in people's speech that change can be used to detect things like Parkinson's earlier than a doctor would ever be able to detect Parkinson's. There are a lot of uses for this data. And so technically the data belongs to all of the users, right? So we don't want to unilaterally make the decision to delete it. So now it's like, do we give users the option to download it before we delete it? Like, what should we do with it? Are we benevolent? Should we give it to a research organization? But like, we don't know how valuable this information that we're all talking about is going to be in the future. And like maybe it will save lives, you know? We just don't know yet. So yeah, email, obviously we know spam filters. You mark something as spam, your computer gets better at identifying it as spam. You know, all the people in the world mark it as spam. It's definitely spam. It goes in your junk mail. Kayak, when you're buying plane tickets, right? Buy now. Our advice is buy now. Prices are likely to increase in 7 days. How do they know that, right? They're looking at how many people are buying. They're looking at what the economic climate is like. They're looking at, well, COVID has kind of thrown a wrench in all this, right? But like, you know, there are people who do this for a living and they can look at the impact of unexpected events on things like this. And then, you know, next pandemic, we'll have more information. Kayak will be smarter. So let's go back to social media. Social media platforms have huge data sets and they let users respond to events instantly. So if you're gonna have your finger on the pulse of humanity, public opinion, society, like all you have to do is be able to look at social media in the right way and you can learn a lot about what's happening. For the first time ever, really, you have access to unrestricted information. And so you can look at how many Facebook users there are, right? I think there's China's Facebook. This is an old graphic, I apologize. So this is how much of the world population uses Facebook. That's how many people are in China. That's how many people are in the US. And that's how much Twitter of the world's population in billions. So this is how many people are online, right? Since I've been talking, I don't know where the graphic went. This is sad. There was a cute little guy with a clock smile. Anyway, since I've been talking, this is how many social media posts have been posted on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Since I've been talking, right? So if you wanted to know about something that happened 20 minutes ago, you already have all of this data. When else in the history of humanity have we had such instant information, right? But there are shortcomings of using this as the tell-all, be-all of what actually is happening in real life, and we'll talk about that. Oh, there's the clock. Okay, so social media can help us understand how people feel, understand how different groups feel, identify which ideas are trending or popular, and identify influential individuals who popularize ideas. And we kind of talked about this a little bit in the first block. So understanding how people feel, it's pretty straightforward, right? You can teach a machine to identify this word as bad, identify this word as good, patterns of speech. You can generally tell how people feel. You can also just do a manual search of like, oh, who here has heard of the birds aren't real movement?
Oh, I love that one.
Okay. We're going to talk about birds aren't real.
My shirt today.
We're going to talk about birds aren't real, and I will explain it. I wanted to know out of curiosity how many people know that. But so understand how different groups feel. Machine learning. So on Twitter, for example, you have to self-identify your location, right? If you don't, you can't really tell conclusively if you want to know how many people in Uzbekistan feel a certain way about this particular thing. It's really hard to identify, even if you use IP addresses, who is really like an Uzbek citizen versus who is just talking about Uzbekistan. So that's where machine learning comes in. The more text you have, the more predictive ability you have to identify what demographic somebody is, what they're likely to respond to. So like we were talking about PR, my sister being a publicist, Barnett's sister being a publicist, the more data that you have about a specific user, the more they engage, the more language they put out there, the more you can infer about them, right? So identify which ideas are trending popular. That's straightforward enough. All you have to do is look at hashtags, retweets. You can identify patterns of discussion. It's very easy. I probably could tell you what's like the most trendy thing today in 5 minutes if I wanted to. Actually, Twitter does it for you, right? But when there's more niche discussions, when we're talking about extremism, trends in extremism, you can also infer those based on the content that people are engaging with, likes, retweets. How many people are going to use similar language to each other. These are all things that go into identifying trends. And then identifying influential individuals who popularize ideas. All of this, we've said nothing really about extremism, fashion, anything. This structure is called network analysis, right? And so you take out the ideology, you take out the subject matter altogether, the internet works the same. I can tell you who is an influential individual in any network if you've given me enough data. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about shoes or, shootings. It's all going to follow the same patterns. So we may be able to predict future ideological trends and anticipate things like real world violence, but there are significant shortcomings with internet data. Number one, internet data is not evenly distributed, right? So the people in, say, Kenya who have the most access to internet are going to be probably wealthier people in Nairobi and other urban areas, and they are less likely to represent the entirety of attitudes in Kenya, right? It's also more difficult in places like rural areas where internet access is maybe not as good. There are language barriers. Maybe there are people who don't engage as much because they don't speak the language around them, but they're the most likely people to be aggrieved, and so on and so forth. So you have to look at the internet as a subset of data, and if everyone were to contribute to the internet equally, fairly, same quality, you could learn basically everything about humanity, but there are limitations, right? So social media can help us understand how people feel, like we said, right? We can look at, people in this demographic who talk about this thing, and then network analysis can help us discover who feels what way. So who's the influential person? Is this person engaged with right-wing media? Is this person engaged with leftist media? You can infer a lot of people just based on the network. And you can see these tweets. Everything has a hashtag. My votes, I think that was South Africa, White Lives Matter, things like that. Okay, now it's going to get fun. Social media allows us to identify and analyze ideological trends and influential individuals. I promise I'm not reading this out loud for my own benefit, by studying hashtags, retweet counts, and @ mentions. So before I go into all of this, I want to hear from you. Who do you think of as an influential person in whatever area is most important to you? Whether that's politics or healthcare or academia. Who do you look at and say, that's an opinion shaper, that's a tastemaker?
Donald Trump.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's. I think he's crossed over the influencer threshold to just being But yes, he is. He can say anything, right? And a million people, millions of people, would just be like, yes, now I believe that. Extreme example.
Like Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Elon Musk could say anything about anything, right? And there would be people who just, by default of the fact that it was Elon Musk that said it, agree with it. What about Oprah? Athletes, yes. What do athletes know about politics? What? Nothing. Nothing. Exactly, athletes. And this is what we're trying to get at. Oprah, right? Can we talk about Oprah? People will trust whatever Oprah says. It doesn't matter whether she's qualified to speak on that topic. She's just a respected individual that people trust. She has earned people's trust, and then that means her opinion matters. And a lot of people will just take that at face value. If it's good enough for Oprah, it's good enough for me, right? It's also a way to confirm your own opinions. If you can find someone influential, well-respected, trusted, and they believe what you believe, now you're validated, right? It's not just me, Oprah believes this. Or, I don't know, Tom Brady believes this. There's problems there. But, we're not gonna go too much into that. That's not the purpose of all of this. It's just seeing how there are, maybe there's a fringe thing, and we're gonna talk about this, right? Maybe there's a fringe thing that, would have never become popular if somebody with influence didn't pick it up. And then their followers are therefore oh, I'm going to look into this. And again, it's the 1%. Tom Brady, so many followers. Oprah, so many followers. All it takes is that 1% to grasp onto an idea, look it up, go further and further and further and further and further down the rabbit hole of radicalization. So let's shift to the topic of influencer marketing. How much do you know about influencer marketing, how it works? Okay. Yes.
I know that at least somewhat recently, they've kind of been forced to attach like this is an ad to a lot of their marketing posts, kind of by merit of how many of them are marketing to children
Mm-hmm.
without pointing that out.
Yes.
Firefest comes to mind.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great. Does anybody know what Firefest is? Firefest is basically this festival that was supposed to be all of these influencers publicized it, and it basically ended up being like akin to a refugee camp, and there was no food and running water. It was bad. But you know, they basically conned all of these people into believing it was going to be this super elite upscale festival. There's nothing there. So influencer marketing, and this is what. This is kind of the tricky thing to explain if you're not engaged on social media with a lot of influencers, but I'm going to do my best. So, brand to consumer advertising. Remember how we were saying that traditional news media outlets are having a crisis of legitimacy? People don't trust them. People know they're being pandered to. People know that whatever is being said, like someone's got their hands in someone's pocket, right? Period. What it is. The same thing is happening with direct brand to consumer advertising. Like the 21st century consumer, I'm willing to say, especially like millennials, elder millennials and down, we don't care about ads. Like literally do not care. We all know everybody is motivated by making $1. People will tell us whatever and get us to believe whatever. Like we've heard all kinds of crazy things. And of course there are some consumer protections, but like really not that many. People can really say anything. And regulators are not that strict in enforcing, consumer marketing. But we trust people like Oprah. We trust people like Tom Brady. And if you go a level down from that, think of a niche interest, right? Pinterest, right? People go on Pinterest because they like to decorate their homes or they like to knit, right? And then I'm part of a knitting community. And there's one lady who's super, super active in my knitting community. And I trust her because I feel like I have something in common with her. And she's constantly serving me. She's giving me tips. She's giving me tricks. And then one day she posts something about essential oils, right? Harmless, and she's like telling us all about this essential oil course that she's taken. And then suddenly she's talking about how she's using essential oils to protect her kids against COVID, right? And I'm like, well, I trust her. Like, she seems to like know what she's talking about in other areas. We have things in common. Maybe she knows something that I don't. So then I Google essential oils COVID. And because I'm looking for it, I'm gonna find a whole lot of stuff, right? And then now I'm getting drawn further and further and further into the world of like essential oils cure cancer. And then I don't even know that that's how this is happening to me. I think, like you were saying, it's all my free will. I'm a smart and intelligent person. I can distinguish what information is good and what information is bad. And that's how influence works on social media today. When we're talking about the democratization of the internet, not everybody can be Tom Brady. Not everybody can be Oprah. Not everybody can be Kim Kardashian. Thank God. But anybody now can become an influencer on Instagram. And just by virtue of the fact that people trust them, people look at them as akin to them. Also, there's something aspirational about looking at somebody's life and seeing that they're close enough to you. Kim Kardashian is all the way out there. I don't relate to Kim Kardashian at all. However, I'm pretty big on fitness. I'm pretty big on yoga, right? And there's this girl who is a yogi and she owns her own wellness brand and all of these things. And I'm like, I have something in common with her. She's not that far out of my reach. I'm young, I'm smart. I could be an entrepreneur. I could do what she does. You know what I mean? And so I look at her life as aspirational, but close enough to mine that I could have that if I wanted to, right? And that's what makes influencer marketing so effective. You're not just buying what they're selling, you're buying them, generally speaking. And you and how you interact with people online, you are forming your social identity around the people that you follow and the people that follow you. And so it's not just liking, retweeting, whatever. Your behavior online is a reflection of your values and who you see yourself to be. And this may sound like it has nothing to do with extremism, but it really does. Will you give me like a 15-minute warning? Okay, thank you. So all of these people are influencers. We're talking about Instagram, right? Instagram is still pretty formal. It's very staged, right? TikTok, however, if you talk about like ISIS and democratizing, you know, jihadism, TikTok has democratized the internet so that anybody can make money off of whatever. Like there's a girl who literally just makes eggs on TikTok and she has so many sponsors. She's not particularly pretty. No, that's mean. Everyone's pretty in their own way. But she's not like particularly talented. You know, like there's nothing necessarily that special about her, but something about her resonated and so many people followed her and she does have a really big following. And like her voice is soothing, okay? Like I watch her, she's cool. And so, you know, anybody really can become a vehicle for this 21st century advertising. So the big brands have caught on, right? They're like, we're not gonna sell directly to consumers. So what we're gonna do is use this middleman, this influencer, and we're gonna have that person, we're gonna pay that person. Yes.
I'd like to share, for those of you that I don't know how many people follow golf, but on the PGA Tour, which is a professional golf tour in our country and the world, this year they're going to start paying players bonuses for who gets the most hits, and Google hits and social media hits. They're going to pay them millions of bonuses at the end of the year for the ones that got the most. And that's how they're trying to put the PGA Tour's name out there and try to grow the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it works for everything. It works for extremism. It works for anything. And if you think...
Like clothing, right? Like there's girls that just go on there and put on outfits and it's like the outfit of the day and they just tell them I bought this at Lululemon and you can...
Exactly.
And then people run out and go get that outfit.
Exactly. Like I follow fitness influencers and if all of a sudden they're like giving me recommendations for like, I don't know, tools to like learn Chinese. I don't know. I haven't really thought through these examples in a long time, right? But because of the fact that I identify with this person and they like this thing, even if I know that they're getting paid, I know that they value my followership more than they value that one brand sponsorship. Because if they lose my trust, if they lose the trust of their followers, they've lost everything. And that's really what makes influencer marketing so effective, is that influencers will only work with brands that they believe are good brands, and then I believe them when they say that. And so, like, whatever, Chinese Rosetta Stone, cool. I don't think she would lie to me, right? She hasn't ever lied to me before. And that's how you build this trust. And so the point is, this works for fashion. You know, Gucci's going to go to the girl who is a travel influencer. She goes all over the world and she takes beautiful pictures. Gucci is going to be like, I will pay you to wear this bag, or I'll just give you the bag for free. Sometimes that's enough, right? I like the bag. I'm going to put it in my photos. I see this girl. I respect her travel. I respect her worldliness. She looks cute with that Gucci bag. I bought that Gucci bag. However, there's a black bag at Target, exactly the same shape, exactly the same size. Gucci bag is $10,000. The bag at Target is $6. Of course, there is a quality differential that justifies some of the price difference, but like not $10,000 of price difference, right? So what are you buying when you buy Gucci?
The reputation.
Cloud, yeah.
Yes.
Untenable.
You're buying an idea or buying into an idea of what you want to be and how you want the world to see you, right?
Lifestyle brand.
Yes, lifestyle influencers. And like, because my sister is a fashion and spirits publicist, this is all she does all day is engage influencers, all day.
So there's a TikTok guy who actually goes around and asks all these people who wear all these labels like Gucci, like St. Laurent, and says, what do you do for a living? Like, I love your Balenciaga shirt. What do you do for a living? And majority
I know.
Majority of the responses is like, oh, I got 2 parents. Oh, I don't do anything.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my goodness, like just the whole, and he's doing it from a more of a social psychology aspect of like getting the reasoning behind wearing the clothes, and does it constitute what they make for a living? And I think 90% of the time it doesn't.
Anybody can create content. literally anybody. And this is kind of a really good segue. Actually, there's the car guy too. So he'll like stand outside of like a really fancy hotel or club, and he'll like see people roll up in their fancy cars. And anyway, we got to move on. But all of these people. So Gwyneth Paltrow turned her brand into like the ultimate wellness brand. Goop can sell me anything, and I know I'm being sold to, right? But I still like my dry brush. It's nice. Right? Like, like I know that this is happening, but I care less, right? And that's kind of the idea here. The same goes for extremism, right? When you buy an extremist idea from a person that you respect and trust online, you're not necessarily buying the extremist idea. You're buying the idea that this is something that you should embody or value or buy into because it fits with your idea of who you are and who you want to be, right? And so this is how someone in one area who has no experience in politics can essentially radicalize a lot of people, even if they have no authority on that subject whatsoever. So everyone's just like, and it obviously is like kind of gimmicky a little bit, but it, you're like, okay, what does fashion have to do with extremism? We talked about that a little bit, right? I was listening to this podcast on a fashion forecasting house called WGSN in the car from DC to New York. And if anybody has ever done that drive, the traffic is always terrible. So I'm just listening to this podcast and they're talking about how through a combination of looking at certain lifestyle, economic, socioeconomic, political factors, and also looking at who is influential and what direction they're going, they can actually predict what's going to be in fashion over 5 years out. And if you know, and this is the next slide, but if you know what the consumer wants or what they're going to want before they know that they want it, you can make a lot of money, right? So you just get to shape tastes before they happen. And so the fashion industry, extremely, extremely profitable, right? They are so good at this. The fact that like, look, I'm wearing Air Force Ones, right? I want all of you, when you leave this room, go around today, if you're in a public place, try and count how many girls wearing Air Force Ones that you see. We have literally nothing in common other than the fact that we have all been in COVID now for however long. I was wearing heels. I haven't worn heels in like 2 years. And I'm like, why am I doing this? So collectively as a society, we've decided that discomfort is no longer necessary, right? Like it's just not necessary. But then like, why Air Force Ones specifically? Why were these the shoes that I had in my bag? They're ubiquitous now. I don't even know who started it, right? But like everyone, I'm a reason. Huh?
Nelly in
Was?
2002.
Well, I mean like,
Cool back in the 90s.
yes.
Yeah.
Who repopularized them? I'm not sure, right? But now everyone is wearing the white Air Force Ones. Why? Because they're cool. Who was that influential person who got photographed wearing white Air Force Ones? I would like to know. I have to buy a new pair every 2 months because I can't keep white sneakers clean. So I would really nice.
Ones too, with just the Nike stripe yellow, with the little charms too that you can personalize your Air Force Ones.
We'll take that offline. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, because I still have mine from 2002, from when I was in high school, and then they turned yellow on their own. But I saw that.
No, this is just.
But I saw that's the type that they sell now, so that haven't aged.
Oh yeah, like the distressed pre-worn. Maybe I'll just keep them. I'm not sure anyone would want to walk in them. That's kind of gross. So anyway, the idea was if the fashion industry is so good at this and their algorithms are so accurate, could we maybe adapt some of their methods and models and try and anticipate things like what's going to be popular in the political space, what's going to radicalize people, like what's going to be the next trendy thing, and that's kind of where all of this came about. Like, what if it doesn't matter? And as we talked about, the network is the thing that matters, right? It doesn't really matter what the subject is. It's the network. If you can understand the network and you can understand who is going to popularize something, you may have a very tiny, tiny, tiny window to direct your efforts in a very targeted way before that influential person is able to push people over the edge and get them to adopt that narrative. So yes, we talked about this. Then social media has, we just talked about this. We can skip this. So why do influencers matter? this is sad. This is a really good video. So we actually talked about this, but this is a TED Talk, and this guy is explaining how, like, why is this person an influencer? Like, what does this person have that I don't have? And the idea is this person is about you. You trust them because you know you're the only reason that they are successful. The lady who makes eggs on TikTok, her fans are the most, or her followers are the most important things ever to her, because she knows without them, she'd be nothing, right? And so the best way to gain consumer trust is by aligning with somebody that you already trust. In ideological terms, that means if I am in a circle with a lot of people who I determine to be, you know, moderately right, not super right, I'm going to plant seeds that are not super offensive, right? But I'm going to try and suss out who is maybe predisposed to moving more towards like right-wing extremism, right? And then that person is going to be in a network, likely with someone that they trust, because that's where they've gotten this information. They've gone further, and then there's always going to be a trusted person there. So let's take a real world example. The caravan ahead of the midterm elections, right? Like, this was like an obsession. It was a media obsession. But like with everything else going on in the world, with all of the problems that we have, why was this the thing that became like one of the main topics of conversation?
It brought people together with the same views.
But it was small. Like in comparison to other things, like the caravan was like, why did this become popular?
Votes.
Hmm?
For votes.
For votes, yes, but how? So this is, sorry?
Media. It was just on TV 24/7.
Yes, but why?
It's ideologically representative of a larger issue that people find problematic.
But why this thing? I'm going to tell you, just spoiler alert.
Because it could influence the results of the election.
But who knew that?
Univision.
Like, who had the crystal ball? Who had the crystal ball and
They
said,
do that.
they were shaking it and they were like, huh, what are we going to use? What are we going to use? Who decided?
Politician.
Yes, but why? Okay, I'm going to tell you. So basically, like anything else, right? There are a million things that could have polarized people, gotten votes, rallied people around their fears, right? Rallied people around ideology, a million things. The caravan was something that a bunch of like forum and like right-wing, like tiny little like blog people were talking about. This is like likely some guy who like doesn't have that many followers, conspiracy theorist, likely pretty racist, you know, he's just like saying stuff, right? Then I'm someone and I'm like, huh, this is interesting. I bet people get angry about this. I like making people angry. I'm an angry person. I'm going to retweet this, right? And then, you know, in the network, these people don't have a lot of followers. They don't have a lot of influence. They are eventually going to catch the attention of somebody who has slightly more influence, maybe 10,000 followers, right? People have like 200 followers each, maybe less, maybe 50 followers. They're going to catch the attention of someone who has 10,000 followers, right? The person with 10,000 followers is going to retweet it. All of their 10,000 followers are going to retweet it. Eventually, it's going to catch the attention of someone who has real influence. Whether or not that person is a political influencer, if they are trusted enough to have that many followers on social media, they are likely going to be able to popularize this in a way that the guy who originated this conspiracy theory, or whatever you want to call it, could not. And then someone like Rush Limbaugh is going to pick it up, right? Now people on the internet are mad. My grandma is mad about the caravan. My cousin's grandma is mad about the caravan. People are double locking their doors. People are like putting their guns in accessible locations because the caravan is coming, guys. Then Fox News is like, huh? Whatever we're talking about, like, why are they not talking about this thing we're talking about on social media? What's this caravan thing? And so then Fox News is like, all right, I guess we're going to talk about the caravan, guys. And then all day, every day, caravan on Fox News, caravan on CNN, because they're doing the opposing viewpoint. Experts are talking about the caravan. It completely took over the discussion ahead of the 2018 elections. And the only reason that that was possible was because someone who had few followers caught the attention of someone who had a few more, and so on and so forth. And like, that's really the point I want to hit home here. It's not about the ideology. It's about the internet, influence, and trust, right? And then you do get someone influential, and you're like, all right, well, if Rush Limbaugh's saying it, if, you know, Tom Brady's saying it, even though he has nothing to do, like, he just doesn't even speak Spanish, I don't think. But, you know, Tom Brady, he's mad about this. I'm going to be mad about it too, you know? Anyway, so I'm going to really, we don't have to talk about this, but the way that we actually piloted this project was we looked at data from 6 months ahead of the 2016 election. It was an 18-month time period, and we basically manually coded a subset of tweets that we had pulled based on a dictionary of terms associated with extremists, right? And we hand-coded the tweets, and we taught the machine to identify extremist content with 96% accuracy, which is very hard to do. It was not easy, but, you know, it's good. So our systems know how to identify extremist content. Then, once we did that, we looked at basically a heat map of this extremist content, and we looked at how it changed over time. And you would see that it would reach a point, and then it would be like, boom, right? And so that's the point where it's the influencer. And if you can teach the machine to send out a predictive warning, like, hey, this might be popular, and this is why the tech companies are not going to be the ones who fix this problem. Because by the time you realize something is a problem, it's too late. The damage is done. Like drinking bleach for COVID, right? Like, even one day later, there's gonna be a couple of people who drink bleach. They're dead now. You failed, right? So like, you have to know that this is something that's gaining buzz. And so if you can look at these maps and you can identify a point that's a little bit behind the tipping point, your odds of curtailing the harm that can come from the popularization of that, it's a very tiny window, but if you can teach the machine to do it well enough, you can probably make a difference. The second thing is, if we can look at these patterns and we can look at which narratives resonate with which demographics using things like natural language processing, geotagging, things like that, we can then simulate the narrative resonance, like who is gonna buy this idea, essentially. You know, like, who thinks this is trendy? And then you can figure out how to effectively give them targeted counter messaging. Because generic counter messaging in counterterrorism, counter-extremism, we all know doesn't work. It actually is counterproductive because people feel insulted. It's not speaking to their particular needs, not specific to their political problems or personal problems or whatever. But if you can target people who you know will be receptive to a certain message with other messages that you know that they will be receptive to, your chances of doing effective counter messaging are way, way, way higher. So how do you do that? You simulate it. So START did a simulation, and then we had a simulation about the effectiveness of counter narratives. And out of that, we didn't finish, sadly. Neither Barnett or I still work there, but there is a lot of promise for adapting methodologies from fashion or anywhere and applying them to different sorts of online problems, like the diffusion of extremist content. I'm going to skip this.
Going back to your counter narrative, though, did you feel like you had to create much more different counter narratives in order to specialize and focus on different sets of groups versus how the consumer first digests the information? It is not as specialized and targeted towards that consumer, but once you're doing the counter narrative, now you actually have to be even more definitive on who you're actually targeting.
100%.
Okay.
And so it's not just one ideology. We're not just looking at people who are like upset about one issue, right? We're looking at overlapping issues. And this is also kind of how machine learning can help us out. What are people who engage with one issue? What else are they likely to engage with, right? And so, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try and explain to you what the computer does because, to be honest, I don't know. But, you know, there are ways of figuring out these patterns. Like we said, how does my phone know I go to bed at 10:30? There are ways. And it's just about the amount of data that you have, and social media gives us a lot of it. And biometrics give us a lot, and all of these different things. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I think you also see it in language, the influence of language. It used to be Merriam-Webster dictionary. Every so often they'd say, these are 5 new words we're adding because things have changed. But now you see the list, and it's like every year, and it's a long list because they decide to say conversate and verse instead of verses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Navy versus Army, and they say Amy versus Army, and Navy versus Army. And then you start seeing that everybody says it now. And then the dictionary has to add those words because they're influencing just the language. Everybody does it.
I'm gonna tell you something, and I feel like every single generation of people, like observing the generation under them, has said this before the internet, after the internet. This will always be a thing. I cannot understand a word my cousin's kids say. Like, they have their own language. Like, they say like sus and cringe. I know because I study social media, but in real life, she's laughing because she knows what I mean. Does anybody know? Does anybody know who this person is?
Is it Jesse?
This girl is a girl named Tinks. You know who Tinks is. All right. Guess how much Tinks gets paid to do one, like, I guess, piece of content about a brand?
Too much.
How much? $150,000 every time she makes a 15-second clip on her story or her TikTok. $150,000. My sister was trying to work with her, and she was like, hell no. But so her claim to fame is being the internet's big sister. She's my age. She's 32. She's like the elder millennial. And basically, she is obsessed with her followers, and she's saying, I'm going to teach people what's cool. I'm going to be like the big sister that gives my followers advice, and simultaneously, I'm going to educate other millennials about what's cool, right? She was the one who taught me that the crying face emoji now, like, you might as well be saying, like, far out, neato. Like, the crying face emoji, not cool. Like, laughing, crying face emoji, right? Like, using proper punctuation now, you have to use more than one exclamation point. You have to put weird spaces between your things, or else it's immediately obvious that you're uncool. So going back to your point, it's not even words being added to the dictionary. It's like literally, if you use the wrong emoji, you're old. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. But this is what we're saying. In the past, getting Merriam-Webster to update their dictionary, that took a long time. That was difficult. The same way that social media is accelerating radicalization, it's accelerating cultural change, it's accelerating changes to language, it's accelerating all sorts of things. And you can see that happening in more ways than one.
Any other questions? Rachel, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You guys have been so wonderful. My contact information and Barnett's contact information right here. Feel free. I encourage you to email. I would love, even in the break, I heard from some of you about what you're doing and what your experiences have been in work and life, and I think that's the best part of this for me. So please, I would love to continue the conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much.